Welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today we will take up new lesson. This is lesson number 7, experiments with water. So it is science of class 5, and when you look at your syllabus for second terminal exam, you will find that lesson number 7 is the last lesson of second terminal exam. So we will be discussing, or we will be learning experiments with water in this video, and half of the portion of lesson number 7 will be completed in this video, and the remaining portion will be uploaded or will be discussed in the next video. So lesson number 7 will be divided into two videos. So in the first one we will discuss half portion of lesson number 7. So the name of the lesson, I would like to repeat it again. The name of the lesson is experiments with water. So under this topic, or under this lesson, we are going to perform some activity which will help us to understand some experiments we are going to conduct with water, which will help us to understand why some things float on water and why some other sink. So the reason we'll be learning under this topic. So the name of the lesson is, I would like to repeat it again, experiments with water. It is on page number 60 of your textbook. So class 5 science. So it starts with the topic, what floats, what sinks. Floats haragana tauba, sink haragana lupani. Taurisina karigino lupisina karigino habi matangni. The tauba karam posak na tawi, karam posak na lupi isingda. Masing matangni koine ne duisiko. Aisha was waiting for dinner. Aisha was waiting for dinner today. Ammi was making her favorite food, puri and spicy potatoes. So the lesson starts with a story of a young girl called Aisha, and she was waiting for dinner. So in the dinner she was going to have puri and spicy potatoes, which was her favorite food. Aisha watched as her mother rolled out the puri and put it in the hot oil. So in order to make puri, it is considered as a deep fried food. So in order to make it, it is dipped in the hot oil. She saw that at first the puri sank to the bottom of the pan. So since it is a deep fried food, so large amount of oil is taken in order to make puri, and the rolled atta is dipped under the hot oil. So it sank to the bottom of the pan. As it puffed up, the puri came up and started floating on the oil. So when it is cooked, it will automatically will float above the oil. One puri did not puff up and did not float like the others. On seeing this, Aisha took some dough and rolled it into a ball. She flattened it and put it in a bowl of water. Alas, it sank to the bottom and stayed there. So she tried to do experiment taking the same ball or same dough, but this time she put it in water. So obviously it sank to the bottom and stayed there. Think what would happen if Aisha put a puff puri in a bowl of water. Would it sink or float? Asagi puff puri hauba loiraba tan akoi kaamaba tan doina thamam taragadi, what would it sink or float? It will float. So puff puri, it floats on water. You put a steel plate on water, would it sink or float? What would happen to a spoon? So if we put steel plate very carefully on water, it will float, but in case of spoon, it will sink. Would the cap of plastic bottle sink or float on water? Since it is made of plastic, it will float. Density is very low. So whether an item will float or sink, it depends upon the density of the material. If the density of the material is lighter than water, it will float. If its density is heavier than water, then it will sink. It depends upon the density of the material. So in the evening, Aisha went for a bath. She had just come out when her mother called. Aisha, you have dropped the soap in the water again. Take it out and put it in the soap cage. Aisha was in a hurry and the soap cage fell out of her hands. It started floating on water. So soft cage, it is made of a plastic, so it will float on water. Aisha gently put the soap in the soap cage. She saw that the cage continued to float even with the soap in it. So the soap cage, which is made of water, which is made of plastic, it floats on water, and even after adding soap, the soap cage, which is made of plastic, it still float. Have you seen that something float on water while others sink? Think how this happens. The poem here rises as questions. So as I told you, solubility this whether an item will float, whether a thing will float or sink, it depends upon the density of the material, and also it depends upon the density of the volume. It depends upon the density of the material, and since density, you will be learning about density in higher classes. It is mass by volume, so we can also say that it depends upon the volume of the item. If volume increases, density will decrease and it will float. So in short, we can say whether a thing will float or sink depends upon the volume of the item. So which is interrelated with density, and you'll be learning about density in higher classes. It is mass by volume, and density is inversely proportional to volume. When there is an increase in volume, density will decrease, so it will float. So in order to keep it simple, whether a thing will float or sink depends upon the volume of the items. One poem is given here. As I says, question, the poem is regarding whether whether a thing will float or sink. Why, oh why, a wooden boat in water will float, but a needle will sink? Why does this happen? Let me think. Hi achobadi isingda tawe. Yatum masam khakti isingda luppe. Maram karigino ham. An iron ship will also float, though it's much heavier than my boat. Wooden boat nataba yuat na sahaba. So hi moibok tawe. Kamaina no. But a needle light as a lift, thin as a pin, will sink right in. Why does this happen? Let me think. So some questions are here, which is related to an atom will float or sink when it is observed. Even a small needle, even a small needle sink. But when we compare with a very large wooden boat and iron ship, they float on water. What is the reason behind? Let's see. Do this and find out. Do this experiment in groups of 4 friends. Each group will need a big pot filled with water and the things listed in the table. Put each thing one by one in water and observe. Write the observation in the table given on the next page. So in order to perform this activity, you have to collect some items which is mentioned in your textbook, and since physical class is not possible, so the experiment cannot be carried out in school. But if possible, if you have the items at your home, you can perform this activity. It's very simple. So in order after performing this activity, you have to record the observation, and while recording you have to tick mark for the things that float and cross mark for those that sink. So when you perform this activity, you have to make a table and you have to record the observation. So while performing this activity, you have to take empty bowl, and you have to guess whether it will float or sink. So and you have to record after putting empty bowl on water. I mean, you have to do the experiment also. First, you have to make the guess without performing the activity, and after performing the activity, you have to record the observation in the third column. So empty bowl. After putting 6-7 small pebbles one by one, slowly you have to check. So out of this, I mean, you will actually know after performing this activity. But empty bowl, it will float. Iron nail, it will sink. Then empty materials made of plastic, they are light and they will float. So some of the some items are given in your textbook, which you have to, some items you have to collect and you have to perform this activity. So iron nail, it will sink. Bowl, it will float. Plastic bottle, it will float. Then the bottle filled with water, it will sink. Aluminium foil, which is used for wrapping eatable items in order to keep it warm. Aluminium foil, when it is spread out, it will float, but when you press tightly and convert it into a ball, it will sink. So find out from the other groups which things floated and which sank in the water. So after performing this activity, you have to discuss with your friends what are their results, what are their observation, and you have to compare the observation with your friends. So before filling up this blank, I would like to give some information related to what we have discussed, so which is not mentioned in your textbook, but but in higher classes you will be learning about Archimedes principle, which is the basic, or which is the principle behind floating of an object. So the name of the principle is Archimedes principle. You will be learning in higher classes about Archimedes principle. So you will be learning the term buoyancy, density and buoyancy, relation between density and buoyancy, and you will be learning about buoyant force and the Archimedes principle. So the reason behind floating of an item, it is explained by Archimedes principle, and you'll be learning about Archimedes principle in higher classes. So actually, in a simple term, since you are in class 5, in a simple term, to know the reason behind floating of an object is actually the weight of water displaced by an item. It depends upon the weight of water displaced by an item. If the weight of the water displaced by an item is less than the weight of the item, then it will sink. I would like to repeat it again. Let's take needle as an example. So needle being very small as compared to large wooden board and iron ship, the size of the needle is very small, but you will find that needle sink in water. So the reason behind the sinking of needle is that the weight of water displaced by a needle is much less than the weight of needle. ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯏꯁꯤꯡꯗ ꯄꯣꯠ ꯑꯃ ꯊꯥꯗꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯂꯨꯞꯀꯗ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯇꯥꯎꯒꯗ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯊꯥꯗꯔꯤꯕ ꯄꯣꯠꯇꯨꯅ ꯏꯁꯤꯡ ꯀꯌꯥꯝ ꯀꯜꯂꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯗꯨ ꯃꯗꯨꯗ ꯗꯤꯄꯦꯟ ꯇꯧꯋꯤ. ꯃꯥꯅ ꯀꯜꯂꯤꯕ ꯏꯁꯤꯡꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯋꯦꯠꯇꯨ, the weight of the water displaced by that particular item, ꯃꯗꯨꯒ ꯑꯥꯏꯇꯦꯝꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯅꯪꯅ ꯂꯧꯔꯤꯕ ꯃꯇꯤꯔꯤꯌꯦꯜꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯋꯦꯠꯇꯨꯒ ꯃꯥꯟꯅꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯍꯟꯊꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯍꯦꯟꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯃꯁꯤꯗ ꯗꯤꯄꯦꯟ ꯇꯧꯕꯅꯤ. So when we take needle as an example, needle ama isingda thadaba matamda isingdugi chang mana kallibadu, mana kanjalliba isingdugi changdugi weight tuga needledugi weight tuna hele aduna ma luppibani. Karigumba needledugi weight tuna handharamagadi tahuni. So when we talk about large wooden board and iron ship, the water displaced by such type of item or such type of things like large wooden board and iron ship, the weight of water displaced by by large wooden board or iron ship, its weight to mana displaced to budu ke doeba, it's much greater than uh, it's much greater than the weight of iron board aduna moisi moi taudoine baduna. So when we take needle as an example, I would like to repeat it again. It is not in your textbook, and you will be learning in higher classes. The weight needle will be simple for everyone. The weight of water displaced by needle is much less than the weight of needle. Weight of needle gi weight to the gi ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯅꯤꯗꯜꯗꯣ ꯊꯥꯗꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯃꯥꯅ ꯗꯤꯁꯄ꯭ꯂꯦꯁ ꯇꯧꯔꯤꯕ ꯋꯦꯠꯇꯨꯅ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯗꯤꯁꯄ꯭ꯂꯦꯁ ꯇꯧꯔꯤꯕ ꯋꯦꯠꯇꯨꯅ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯍꯟꯊꯈ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯃꯔꯝ ꯑꯣꯏꯗꯨꯅ ꯂꯨꯞꯈꯤꯕꯅꯤ ꯁꯤꯅꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯥꯔꯀꯤꯃꯤꯗꯤꯁ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯤꯟꯁꯤꯄꯜꯗ ꯏꯟ ꯗꯤꯇꯦꯜꯗ ꯇꯝꯃꯛꯀꯗꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯀꯣ ꯕꯣꯌꯦꯟ ꯐꯣꯔꯁꯀ ꯇꯝꯃꯛꯀꯗꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯇꯥꯡꯗ ꯉꯥꯛꯇꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯃꯊꯪꯒꯤꯗ ꯂꯥꯛꯑꯁꯤ ꯀꯣꯏꯁꯟꯗ fill in the blanks ꯄꯤꯔꯤꯕꯁꯤꯀꯣ after doing the experiment, fill in the blanks. The iron nail sank in water, but the katori, that is ball, floated. I think this happened because iron nail displays less amount of water than the katori. ꯑꯩꯅꯁꯨ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯍꯥꯏꯈ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯂꯨꯞꯄꯤꯁꯦ ꯀꯩ ꯃꯔꯝꯒꯤꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ the weight displaced by the item is much less than the weight of the item. So in case of iron nail displays less amount of water than the katori. That's why iron nail sinks. The empty plastic bottle floated on water. The bottle filled with water sank because filled water displays less amount of water. Loop piba maramsi karigino haragadi because they displace less amount of water. If the particular item can displace more amount of water, then it will float. So in case of filled bottle water filled bottle displays less amount of water, that's why it sinks. The aluminum foil floated when it was spread out. When pressed tightly into a ball, it sank. This is also same reason, displays less amount of water. So aluminum foil pressed tightly into a ball displays less amount of water, that's why it sinks. So I would like to repeat it again. So whenever an item displays less amount of water, then it will sink. So in case of needle, in case of iron nail, the reason is similar. Iron nail, then bottle filled with water, and then aluminum foil pressed tightly into a ball, needle, all these items will sink because they displace less amount of water. So since you are in class 5, we cannot discuss Archimedes principle, we cannot discuss relation between density and buoyancy, we cannot discuss buoyant force, which you will be learning in higher classes. So in a simple term, just remember that whatever an item, the reason for floating or sinking, the reason behind is the reason is it depends upon the volume of an item or the water they are going to displace. That means the amount of water they are going to displace. If it is less, then the item will sink. So in case of iron nail, needle, I would like to repeat it again. In case of iron nail, needle, and then a bottle filled with water, they all sank because they displace less amount of water. So that is the reason behind. So with this half of the portion of lesson number 7 is complete, and the remaining half will be discussed in the next video, which is going to be this lesson is the last lesson of second terminal exam, and with this our syllabus for second terminal exam is complete. So with next video, that is second video of lesson number 7, in which half of the remaining portion will be discussed. that will be the last video of second terminal exam. So with this I conclude my video, my lecture. Thank you for watching, and I repeat it again, I will half of the portion will be uploaded in the next video. Thank you for watching.